What is up? Welcome back to the Transparency. Good afternoon. It's a Sunday all day. Idaho4, Barb, Wolf, and Brent Turvey, expert reports. Again, happy Sunday. Now remember, Barbara Wolf, she basically went and she was part of this team early on and was present with Matt Nodell. Her report is in length, what was it, 22 pages. And the only part I'm going to point out is that her opinions, as far as there's evidence to suggest that the weapon that Singh says, like, okay, yep, it's consistent with being a K-bar. She takes umbrage with that. She has a problem with that. No. And so her opinions and the basis of her reasoning and all of that shit comes at the beginning of page, or at the end of page 10. And so that's where I'm going to begin, which is, it is my opinion. So if you actually turn to page 11, then at the top, it is my opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty and in agreement with the opinion of the autopsy pathologist that the causes of death of Ethan, Kaylee, Xana, Maddie were multiple sharp injuries. In general, I agree that the majority of the wounds are consistent with the estimation of the width and the thickness of the blade, which is right there. However, somebody that's actually going to do their job and go through and be thorough, as Barbara is, she's been around the block. She's good. She wanted everybody to know that this general information, and this is how Anne would have had her on the stand, explaining the difference that there is, you can tell a difference based on if something's a laceration, if something's a stabbing. And I think Barbara takes issue with Singh's, generalization or summary and just everything's this, And so she basically has to break it down because think about this, the jury is going to see these photographs. And if someone's going to sit here and tell you that, hey, there is evidence that shows that there's multiple weapons that were used, and it's not just on one person that a different weapon was used. So in here, that's what this general information was for on page 10. She talks about if a knife is dull, the morphology, and that sometimes it is hard, but there is a way to, as she says, you're going to, right here, reappropriate. So there is a way. It is essential to reappropriate the edges of the wound to release the tension. If you're going to go ahead and examine, you have to do it correctly. And so when you reappropriate, the measurements of the length of the stab wound will be more accurate, accurately reflected right here with the width of the blade of the knife at the point that it penetrated the body. And why that's important is because I'm trying to break it down in the best layman's terms possible. But what we're talking about here is your width of the blade. Okay, we're not talking about length. We're talking about the width of the blade. And so she goes and gets, and in her report, she shows and gets an exemplar. So she goes and gets the K-Bar exact knife that they believe goes in the sheath that it was made for. So Barb was like, I have to break this down for the jury and explain that there is no way that some of these stabbings or lacerations, they aren't lacerations, they are stabbings that Singh says that are lacerations. But more importantly, there is no fucking way in hell that this is the weapon that did it. And so basically, when I was reading this, it's like, what did this was way skinnier. And so here I'm going to show you guys. So she is like, hey, besides the fact that she discarded shit that she shouldn't have, and guess what she did is she horribly is doing numerical numbers and then letters. And so it was time consuming to go through and to match everything up because there was no order to this. Like, why aren't you using just the same numbering process? It was mind blowing. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and just read all of this. I'm just saying that when she's sitting down there talking about, yeah, things were more difficult, or there wasn't a diagram and it's not, how did you not make a diagram? Where are your notes? What the fuck? Like, what did you do in real time? You know what I mean? So, however, it is further my opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that not all of the sharp force injuries observed on the decedents could have been inflicted by the knife described by Singh. Now, this, and she talks about Maddie, she talks about Kaylee, and she talks about Xana. But she has none of these type of findings for Ethan. All right. And so I thought about that. And that really was important for me because what I've been saying here for a while is that, yes, could this be multiple people? Yes. Did this obviously take way more time than they're telling us? Yes. But could this have been two different attacks? So Barbara Wolf is like, hey, I'm going to show you on Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee what I'm talking about. So Madison Mogan had one sharp force injury. Kaylee had one, and Xana had at least 3 with configurations that differ from Singh's estimation of the measurements of the inflicting knife. These wounds are also described above in the summation of the decedent's injuries. I wasn't going to read through that because that's not what the purpose is for this. I want to show you guys, if I was on the jury, what would catch my attention. So here for Maddie, this is blacked out because it's obviously a picture that is of the crime scene. Okay. But what she wants us to point to is that she's saying here, this wound on Maddie depicted below is the stab wound below. It is measured 3/4 inches times by 3/16 inches on the skin surface and had a path that extended to a depth of approximately 2 inches. As seen on the exemplar knife, at a distance of 2 inches from the tip of the blade, the width of the knife is approximately 1 1/4 inches. So what she shows is she's like, here you go. When you take, if it went in 2 inches, this is the part of the knife where it would be. And if you see how many inches it is width-wise, you are looking at, like she just said, not the findings of, so this basically couldn't be it because it's way too wide. This is more something like a dagger. It's skinny. This is like skinny. So think about that. So again, she's over here and she says here, three sixteenths of an inch. Now take a look. Like, wait, what? And now think about because what Barbara is saying is that, okay, if we take this knife and we put it in somebody 2 inches, it's going to go all the way to here. Okay. And that means that this opening has to be at least 1 inch and 1, 2, 3, 1 1/3. Like, I mean, you guys can count. Okay. So again, she just takes right from the report of Singh, and Singh is saying the wound depicted below is the stab wound below Maddie's left clavicle. It measured 3/4 inches, 3/16 inches on the skin surface, and had a path that extended to a depth of approximately 2 inches. So when you do all of that, and you go and you take the K-bar knife and you put it in 2 inches, it is going to be way wider. So what caused this, okay, was not this knife. What caused that wound on Maddie was not this knife. And so what I start thinking about in my head is, okay, when do we think that that happened out of all the wounds? That's like what my brain starts thinking about is, okay, so this one here, like, when do we think that this happened out of all the different wounds, right? So that's the first question that I asked myself. Now, going on to Xana. The wound depicted below is the stab wound on Xana's, it's her left upper chest. Again, so just like it was Maddie's left clavicle. So again, this is left. It is labeled number 1 in the autopsy report and G in the autopsy photographs. Like, this is the shit that pissed me off. And it would piss anybody off that's trying, like, and then there's no diagram. Please. It measured, again, take a look. I'll zoom in. It measured 3/4 inch, same thing. See that? On the skin surface, and had a path that extended to a depth of approximately 6 inches. So this measurement here is the same measurement that is on Maddie, okay? And then, but in Maddie, it only went, now, so think about where Maddie's laying on the bed, let's just say, and it only went as deep as 2 inches. But here, we find out that, oh, wow, it's like the same width, this instrument, but here on Xana, it was able to go in 6 inches. So now we can say to ourselves, hey, this instrument is basically the same. It just didn't go as deep into Maddie, okay? But guess what? She wants us to know when she says, as seen on the exemplar knife, which we're about to see, at a distance of 6 inches from the tip of the blade, the width of the knife is approximately, see that, 1 3/16 inches? Not this 3/4. So here, when you take, and now this is 6 inches long, and again, do you see the width? And so here it's like, okay, wow. And you guys, I back in the day, I posted and I showed you this broad named Bridget, who was really close friends with Dylan. And her chest was tatted with a dagger. I'm going to repost that tonight because I really want you guys to see. Like, I was just like, this gave me chills because of, in my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, that fucking broad. this broad from back in the day when I was doing my deep dives on social fucking media. So this shit matters. If you're going to be a logical human being and say, okay, so wow, okay, so Maddie had that on her, right? And so did Xana. Now Xana had this happen 3 different times. And so she's like, okay, well, here's this other time. Xana had a wound on her right upper chest. It was labeled number 2 and number 3 in the autopsy report, H in the autopsy photographs, that consisted of 2 linear defects in the underlying tissue. It measured 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch on the skin surface and had a path that extended to a depth of approximately 4 inches. The wound on Xana's right posterior scalp measuring 1 inch and 1/4 inch on the skin surface. It is labeled number 2 in the autopsy and DD in the autopsy photographs and had an approximate 5-inch path, 5 inches deep. The photograph above demonstrates that with paths extending to these depths of 4 and 5 inches, these wounds would have had a longer length on the skin, like the whole. Okay. If this item was used. And you could never be on the stand and somebody say to you, oh, well, about stretching. Well, that would be the opposite way. It would have to be stretched to make it bigger. You get what I'm saying? Like you can't even, so nobody could make that argument. And that's why she's over here talking about how you have to reappropriate and truly do this. And so I'm over here like this is really skinny, what's being used. These wounds would have had a longer length on the skin surface if they were inflicted with a knife having this configuration. And so she's basically eliminating. Barb Wolf is eliminating this weapon. Okay. As this is not the only weapon. So now we're not just talking about Kaylee because we haven't even gotten to Kaylee yet. So on Maddie and Xana, there was weapons that were used on them that no way in hell could it be this K-bar knife. And so I want to remind you guys of something. Do you remember when Steve Gonsalves said that Brian Kober went in there with a kill kit? Somebody was leaking hell of information to Steve Gonsalves. This is why he would be saying that Brian Kober went in there with a kill kit. Because he knew this. Now, and when I say leaking, I just mean he had the information. And if he's an educated person that he is, he's reading it. Okay. And anybody could make this, anybody could pump in the, I would think the autopsies, if you receive those and you look at numbers, and if you're a numbers person, it's going to pop out to you right away that this knife could not be the weapon that made some of these injuries. I mean, it is what it is. So then I want to talk about a folding pocket knife. But we're going to get to that because we have one more thing to discuss here. Because then you go to Kaylee, and the wound depicted below is the stab wound on Kaylee's. Same thing, her upper chest above the left clavicle, okay? And this is what the FBI behavioral analyst that wrote the unsigned report is saying, that I personally believe that that's where they're going with that. These are signature wounds and blah, 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 like that path of ritualistic and blah, blah. Left, left, left. Everything's left. And everything's, but Barb's over here saying, I just believe it was a blitz attack. And that was what was like available for them immediately or something like that. Because she doesn't agree that she doesn't agree with the findings that this was like a ritualistic killing or something. Okay. But I also believe, you guys, when you read these reports, there is just so much that's like, God, there's like no investigation, man. They don't have shit to go off of. And then you got your Barb's asking for shit. It's like, we discarded that. What do you mean you discarded that? What are you talking about? How do you even say that? So here with Kaylee, it was gaping and measured 3/4 inch, 1/2 inch on the skin surface, had a path that extended to a depth of approximately 4 inches. Again, same thing with the Xana with that 4. That was the photo of it as seen on the exemplar knife at a distance of 4 inches from tip of the blade. With the width of the knife, it is approximately 1 3/16 inches. And I'm like, this is way skinnier. I said, could this be a steak knife? And you guys, no, it can't. I mean, I don't think it is, because you're going to see why she basically says that it's not. The steak knife isn't skinny enough either. I mean, we're talking daggers. So again, this injury is it's a way skinnier object. So then she talks about serration. So Dr. Singh also recorded that some of the wounds sustained by Maddie and Xana showed evidence of striations. And so she goes and she's like, takes that picture, and she's like, Maddie had an incision wound on the right side of her forehead with fine striations within an associated abrasion. Madison also had a stab wound with an abrasion associated with fine on her upper left chest. It measured 1 1/4 inches, 3/16 inch on the skin surface, and had a path that extended to a depth of approximately 2 inches. Well, so what does Barbara go and do? Those are the pictures. So she obtained an exemplar full-size K-bar knife with a partially serrated blade below for comparing with this wound. But guess what? This knife, you want to know why? Well, because the serrations begin at a distance of approximately 4.5 inches from the tip of the knife, and it only went in 2 inches. You're not able to get to this yet. The serrated portion of the blade would be far from the skin surface and would not have caused the serration seen. The same holds true for the superficial incised wounds on Madison's forehead. Xana here, a linear incised wound of her right posterior scalp measuring 1 inch and 1/4 inch that was associated with an abrasion within which were fine. And she's like, no, she's like, because the path of the wound extended to a depth of approximately 5 inches, this wound should be classified as a stab wound. So she's like, first of all, this is, you're labeling it incorrectly. And then she just wants you to see that right here is 5. And when you zoom in and you look in Xana's autopsy report, in the weapons section, Dr. Singh opines that some wounds consist with partially serrated blade. She does not opine on serrations on the blade in the weapon section of Madison's report. So, so we have an issue here. For me, we have an issue here. So then, I think Barbara just can't believe like the slop shit. Blunt force injuries. There are other injuries that are inconsistent with being caused by a knife and therefore also suggest that the use of another weapon or weapons. Most notably are the 2 lacerations of Kaylee's scalp and the associated, the skull fracture. So these are blunt force injuries, which would necessitate with significant weight to fracture the heavy occipital bone. And so she's like, this is not the butt of the so she shows 2 pictures there. It is unlikely that these injuries were inflicted with an assailant using the end of the handle of a knife, having the configuration of the exemplar knife. The wounds do not have a circular configuration as they would have if the base of the knife struck the head perpendicularly, nor all this shit. So it's like, we did this, we showed, like, this is not it. But she's just like eliminating things to say, you guys are just trying to say about this, and which is making it more and more that the knife sheath being planted. Okay. So she's able to say that there is possible gagging. And I just go back to, questioning about the rumors of somebody being, on, I don't know if it was the first day or the second day that they took questions and did that. Were the victims bound and gagged? Okay. Like, where did that come from? And you guys remember Chief Fry was like, no. Remember, he's like, what? He was totally not expecting that question. But where did it come from? And at that point, we have to figure out if that was on the 16th or if that was on the 20th. If that question came on the 16th or the 20th. Because I think it's significant if it came on the 16th. Because if it came on the 16th, they hadn't done the autopsies. And so that's really interesting why this person asked that person that. So if that was asked on the 16th, the autopsies weren't finished. They wouldn't have had that. So basically, based on the above described observations and measurements, it is my opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty that some of the sharp and blunt force inflicted on Kaylee, Gonzalez, Xana, and Maddie are not consistent with having been caused by a knife with the dimensions estimated by Dr. Sang in her reports of the postmortem examinations. Additionally, and she talks about Kaylee's blunt force and asphyxiated injuries were not caused by a cutting implement. This indicates that there were at least 2 knives used, one of which was narrower than the configuration of the knife that caused the majority of the evaluable wounds. What? and a blunt. You see that? Valuable wounds and a blunt object or surface. This raises the likelihood that there was more than one assailant involved in the homicides. The likelihood of there having been more than one perpetrator is supported by the fact that it seems highly improbable that one assailant would be able to control and kill 4 young healthy adults in the extremely short time frame during which the killings occurred, that has been established by investigative information. Additionally, the lack of blood and or DNA evidence in Brian Culber's vehicle and his apartment suggests that there was another vehicle involved. She's not saying that, fuck to Brian. She's saying fuck to your secondary car, your secondary scene, crime scene, which is the car. Because, and it's like, thank you so much. There's nothing in his apartment. There's nothing in his car. And they went to town on the car. And I have no idea why they didn't go into the drains of either of the houses. But she's just basically saying that you need to find a new vehicle. And so what I'm trying to say is either the vehicle that y'all are saying that's circling around, it's not his car. Whose is it, though? Or that car has absolutely nothing to do with any of this shit, right? Brian could be Edward Scissorhands as well. The other thing that I thought was, it was a great way of saying it, that like, she's not saying like Brian isn't involved. She's just saying that additionally the lack of blood and any DNA evidence in Brian Culber's vehicle and his apartment suggests that there was another vehicle involved. The multiple wounds sustained by the victims, including some that would have resulted in, I believe that the gloves, they would have been covered, would have left blood on the clothing and bodies of the perpetrator or perpetrators, or any protective coverings that may have been worn, the disposition of which would have further lengthened the time frame involved in the killings. Again, I mentioned this the other day that this is the first time we're hearing about this fucking report from somebody in the FBI that didn't sign a report, which is mind-blowing. But she respectfully disagrees. Well, I do agree that the attacks were a surprise/blitz in nature. In my opinion, the location of the wounds were the results of opportunity, in that they were inflicted in body areas that were exposed on the victims who were in bed and when they were awakened. And so, but I went back to see what she looked at. See this right here? This is when Ann Taylor's asking Payne what the hell he was provided. Did the FBI provide you with material? Yeah, they provided him an entire case analysis. Okay. When I was going through this though, we don't have she didn't look at any like cell brite extractions or anything to do with anybody's phones or anything like that. But it's interesting because of Dylan's statements that like that it was Kaylee that came down, you know what I mean? However, the superficial incised wounds of Kaylee's and Madison's neck merit comment. And this is what I talked about the other day, which was Kaylee's incised neck wounds are shown below on the left and Maddie's is on the right. They are even more superficial than those on Kaylee's neck. So Maddie's is more superficial than Kaylee's and are described as being minimally hemorrhagic. The superficial nature of these wounds is very unusual. The skin is the toughest tissue of the neck until the spine is reached. Once the skin is breached, it takes much less force to cut through the underlying soft tissue. So such wounds are usually deep. That means this person, it's like somebody that is used to surgical hands. Okay. Because according to Barb Wolf, when you try to do something like that, you're going to go, it's just so easy to go deep. I look at Brian Culber's handwriting and I think, what? You know what I mean? Also, she's making it a point to say that it is difficult to understand how these wounds were produced in the course of the obvious struggle. And that's her way of basically saying that it did not happen during the commission. And emotion involved in the deaths of these women. Like with them moving, it's just, she's saying it without saying it. It can be postulated that these wounds were deliberately inflicted superficially, which would have necessitated precision movements and would have further lengthened the length of time involved in the killings. So then, again, if it's Brian Kohlberger, it's not just a K-bar knife. Okay. It's multiple knives. It's way longer. And it has nothing to do with that fucking car. And then so one would have to ask ourselves, ready for this, which I think is really important, is that Brian Kohlberger was in his car that night, right? At 4:48 to the time he got home, right? So if Brian Kohlberger is in his car, regardless of where it's at, doesn't matter, just for argument point here, is that he has his car. I think that if you lay it out properly, you can use that to your advantage. To be saying that there is not a question out there that Brian Kohlberger was in his vehicle that night. He just wasn't over there. He just wasn't any part of that, okay? So in a weird way, Brian utilizing his vehicle and being in it that night, right after they said this happened, right? Well, his car should be, like I said, wait till you see this report of the way that they went about his car. Happy 14th month. Yes. So hold on. I saw Miss Potts in here earlier. What's up, mods? So Brent Turvey, okay. Everybody was like, wow, Brent Turvey, all the things he was saying. Well, let's see what his report is saying. So he's hired. And let's go to the purpose. Mr. Turvey's purpose. The purpose of this report is to provide a forensic assessment relating to the examination of available physical and behavioral evidence. So now this is where it's like, whoa. So Cy-Ray is all about that behavioral shit. Behavioral fusion, right? So specifically, this examiner is at crime scene analysis of the stabbing incident by defense counsel and Taylor. So right here, if I'm making a little here. Turvey's getting a mark point. Why, Lana? Well, because Brent Turvey was hired to do this. Okay. Hired to do this. I look at Cy's book and I see him talking about a pristine that the investigators worked and collected evidence in a pristine manner. And I just fall over it with that. Okay. Like, what are you talking about, man? They never even processed the front door. So that's what he's assigned to do. And the crime scene analysis is the process of examining and interpreting the specific features of a crime, related crime scenes, and relevant contextual information. And I love how they're talking about context because it matters. It requires consideration of the complete forensic investigation to include context, forensic victimology, and the subsequent examination of available physical and behavioral evidence, crime scene reconstruction. And so he's typing all that. It can also be used to infer motive. And evidence associated with the crime, charges brought by the state by competent forensic investigators and examiners. And so access to justice is a basic right for all and is solely the responsibility of the government. The response of the state to criminal complaints or lack thereof establishes the abilities and limitations set forth for the complainant in this regard. In the state of Idaho, related rights are explicitly and implicably detailed in the rights of the crime victims. So the rights described within cannot be secured without due process or due diligence. The United States Constitution also has a due process requirement, which necessitates a thorough and competent investigation of all allegations without deception or bias. These collective declarations establish that thorough and competent investigations by the state are both a state and federal right, which can be satisfied by the due process and the due diligence of government agents. Absent due diligence by state investigators, which is necessary for due process, individual rights may be ignored or directly even violated. So I want to know what he examined. He came on in late October of 2024. So basically a whole year later than Cy and Tom. He did related security camera videos and enhancements from the area. I want to know what these enhancements are. I'm just curious about that. The 911 call by Bethany Funk. Related law enforcement affidavits, warrants, and reports to include the Moscow Police Department, the Idaho State Police, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That intrigues me. Related law enforcement photos, body cam and videos, related forensic investigation, examination, criminalistics reports, and photographs, autopsies, related cell phone extractions. Remember I told you guys, I said I need to see if Brent Turvey had access to the extractions, and he's saying that he did, because that's going to contextualize stuff, right? I know the big thing should be like, when did everybody get home? Related law enforcement witness interviews. The list does not encompass the entirety of the discovery material, blah, 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 blah. Right? Awesome. Additionally, this examiner traveled to Moscow and examined physical evidence in police custody at the Moscow Police Department. This occurred with the help of and under the supervision of members of the Moscow Police Department. Ann Taylor and her investigator were also present to witness and assist with photograph documentation. So they took their own photographs. This evidence viewing took place over the course of an entire day on December 12, 2024. Photographs were taken of all items opened and examined, including the suspected vehicle, the vehicle, available bloody clothing, bedding and bed frames and mattresses. It also included examination of various knives collected during the law enforcement investigation and the K-bar knife sheath mentioned later in this report. So I said, why did Brent Turvey say that the relevant incident background would be best described by Officer Warner's report? He could pick any of those. Okay. Relevant incident background. And he goes and picks here number 2, and it's Eric Warner, the guy who just fucked with the document release from Moscow Police Department from that night that I just did. So he puts his report in. And I think it's worth noting, I'm going to show you why I believe that he did this. Because they talk about the knife that Johnson picked up, by the way. It said that Johnson said that he checked the room with the knife for protection. Okay. Which is actually totally contradiction, because I thought that it was he went in there first, then comes back out, then go gets a knife to then go back in there to check the closet. Next, after clearing the home, I briefly interviewed Johnson. Johnson said he was at his apartment, 621 West Taylor Ave, number 1. So that's where he lives at 6. Johnson said he was at his apartment. You guys, what? Remember, what is in this is not redacted, baby. Okay. He was at his apartment at 621 West Taylor Ave, apartment number 1, and his girlfriend, Emily Allant, received a phone call from one of the girls who lived at 1122 King Road. Johnson said Allant was called by one of the residents who said they could not wake the female on the floor. Okay. Remember this. Here we go, baby. Let's go. Why did Brent Turvey pick this one? Oh, I think we found out. Let's talk about it. So right here, after clearing the home, I briefly interviewed Johnson. Johnson said he was at his apartment, 621 West Taylor Ave, apartment number 1. I thought he slept over and was at Emily and Josie's apartment. Josie's on vacation far away. So he's like, remember even Dylan's over here saying that I knew that Hunter was with Emily So I called Emily. Wait, what? What? So Johnson said Alant was called by one of the residents who said they could not wake the female on the floor. Johnson said he came over to the home at approximately 11:55. What? Johnson said he saw the female on the floor in the bedroom and did not see the male on the bed, who he identified as Ethan, before grabbing the knife. Thank you. Ding, ding, ding. So he goes into the room first. Sees, again, we're getting multiple stories, right? How did all this happen? What was the order of all of this? Like I said, I thought that he went in there first, then hey, where's your knives? What do you mean, where's our knives, motherfucker? In the kitchen. But before grabbing the knife, Johnson said he entered the bedroom and checked the female's pulse and found none. Johnson said he did not check Ethan and left the room. Or I'm sorry, and left the home. I thanked Johnson for talking with me and told him he could go stand with Alant, who was with the other residents in front of the home. I stood by the front door, blah, blah. Gunderson relieved me for approximately 3 minutes so I could get my gloves during my time at the front door. At approximately 3:02 hours, I was relieved by Officer Rosinski, who took possession of this. At approximately this time, I came back and took over for Smith. Okay. So there's a reason that he picked this one. So I wanted to remind everybody and refresh everybody, hey, this is why. He also wrote this report on November 18th. So 5 days had gone by. And guess who reviewed this? David Hathaway. David Hathaway. Like, what? Okay, anyways. So I want you to look at some of the language that Turvey wants to use here. And so after he shows, he puts the report in there. And then he goes right here and he's like, the 3-story rental house. And he just lists that. But then he goes, the homicides are reported to have occurred on November 13th, 2022, in the early hours of the morning, just after 4 a.m. Are reported. This history, context, and report information are necessary and foundational to the forensic conclusions offered within this report. This is in compliance with the national, blah, blah, blah. So investigative and forensic issues. Remember my red flag project? The following investigative red flags are evident in this case, requiring further investigative attention and resolution. So this is how he says it. So he's like, crime scene security, physical evidence. So he cites where we're taught this, right? And the crime scene security and establishing evidentiary chain of custody are essential for the preservation of evidence integrity. Boom, right out the gate. So this is 1,000,000% aligning with his interview that he did. On Custody Queens. He's had an issue with what? Well, what does he say in his first fucking sentence? Well, I have issues with this chain of custody because it's essential for the preservation of evidence integrity. So, check. Evidence integrity is demonstrated by establishing a reliable chain of custody for evidence present and the scene, the protect. Okay, we know that. I just want to go to where. There we go. Evidence integrity and the underlying chain of custody for any item of physical evidence may not be assumed. These must be documented and established. Otherwise, reliable interpretations and reconstructions are not possible. Now, the reason I'm going in this order, and I didn't do Matt Nodell after, or I should say before Barbara, is because we've heard from Turvey. But Matthew's the first person that came in and did everything for Anne. Okay. And he nails it. And that's going to take like a 4-hour live to go through because it's so in depth. But I'm going to try to make it only a 2-hour live because I'm just going to point out, like, here's what you guys just need to know. And after you go and get one expert in that field, then the state usually have an expert, right? But then you need somebody that's going to rebut what the state could possibly say about your expert, and then like Matt. And so that's where Brent Turvey, in my opinion, was going to come in terms of to just. I don't even think he was needed because Matt did something that was so genius. He uses Paulette Sutton's own work as his examples. He cites her fucking books. He cites her literature. And I'm like, fuck yeah, Matt. God, that just, like, that's the shit right there. So when we get into Matt, I'll be pointing that out. I'm like, he's like, the author of this says that the author of it is fucking Paulette Sutton. Woo! It was just, I don't know, that type of stuff just like boom. So Matt's just on another level. He did everything. His report's like, I don't know, 134 pages. But he was just so thorough and just so matter of fact. And he did not do anything that was like, oh, I think this and blah, blah. No, he is just like butter. So in the present case, some law enforcement efforts were made to secure the crime scene subsequent to the arrival of crime scene processing personnel, to include stationing officers in the front and the rear. However, a number of security failures are evident. These failures had a harmful impact on chain of custody and related evidentiary integrity. So he's going to the core. This is where I would start to, like, let's talk about this fucking pristine, crime scene. The fuck it is. It is anything but that. It was trampled all over. Again, though, but I believe Cyray's book is an absolute troll. So that's my take on the book. These failures, which prevent certainty with respect to who had access to the crime scene and when, prior to processing efforts, include the following. 8-hour unsecured. The scene was not secure for approximately 8 hours prior to the arrival of law enforcement. During this extended time frame, the remaining housemates and other potential persons entered, moved about freely, and exited the home without their movements being documented. This reality has the inescapable effect of disturbing and confounding the physical evidence as it would ultimately be discovered and secured by law enforcement. These evidence dynamics are not noted as detrimental in subsequent collection or examination efforts, despite having a negative impact on chain of custody and relative evidence integrity. He's basically saying in no report will you ever see them talk about this. And in no report are they ever asked, like, okay, who came here? Who was here? Like, oh, we just stayed in the bedroom the whole time. The activity of Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk is number 2. Look at this. Number 1 is the 8 hours. Number 2 is Bethany and Dylan. The activity of Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk. Dylan Mortensen, so remember, he's seen the extraction. So he's allowed, so I'm like, this is well within him saying this. The activity of Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk. Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk were not approached or attacked during this incident. This, despite being awake and texting with each other at the time, 4 a.m., with Dylan reporting that she saw an intruder outside of her bedroom door. Their digital activity appears to have continued after this, indicating that both were awake, texting, and making phone calls before their reported activity in relation to calling friends, family, and eventually 911. Do you understand what that sentence says? That they were doing things that they never reported doing to the police. That's what that sentence says. Right here. Their digital activity appears to have continued after this, after the, we're awake and now we're in the same bedroom, indicating that both were awake, texting, and making phone calls before their reported activity in relation to calling friends, family, and eventually 911. So what Turvey is saying is that they did not tell everything that they were doing, that this is not comporting with their statements. Like, they're only telling us this, and there's this, the digital paper trail shows. Emily Allant was contacted by Dylan Mortensen at around 11:50 a.m. Emily was reportedly asked to come over and check on the house with her boyfriend, Hunter Johnson. Hunter Johnson did so as described below. But remember, they're not together allegedly. He's at his apartment. Hunter Johnson's at his apartment. So that's what Turvey's thinking right now. Turvey is going based off of Eric Warner's interview of Hunter Johnson, and Hunter Johnson saying, I was at my apartment. What? I thought you were at Emily and Josie's apartment and that you spent the night. Now, does Lyndon Beck emerge as like, let's go back to what Lyndon Beck was talking about. Let's go back to, So, Hunter Johnson did so as described below. Prior to the arrival of Emily and Hunter, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk had unfettered access to all areas of the residence, but reported not leaving their Bethany's room after Dylan went to Bethany's room to join her. Basically, that there isn't supposed to be there. It is unclear whether law enforcement fully investigated and established the activity in the home during this 8-hour interval. He's basically alluding to the fact that they did not, because we have their shit, the extractions, and these people were active. And they were active not just on their cell phones, but that these cell phones were moving. They were moving. It is unclear whether law enforcement fully investigated and established the activity in the home during this 8-hour interval. And the reason he's saying that is because nobody asked them any questions about the fact that their fucking phones are showing that they're moving around. But they're saying that they were sleeping and that they never left Bethany's bedroom. Exactly, Kate. I can't think of another case where that goes unchecked. Um, or why police EMS were not called despite concerns about one of their housemates being passed out and non-responsive. And right there, I'm like, what is he talking about? Because what do you mean, why police? And so I think what he's going to say is that, well, again, according to Hunter Johnson, right, in his interview, is that they tried to wake up the roommates, or at least one of them, aka Xana. And so what he's basically going to say is that, well, from this report here, you would have to get some clarity. What do you mean you tried to wake them up or her up? You don't wake people up by calling. Oh, wait, was Xana even called? No. Guess who was called? Xana was never called. That's the other thing, is that you're able to use the extractions and to say that, well, they didn't try to wake them up that morning because the only people that allegedly were called. But is that how you truly wake somebody up? And why you're saying like someone's passed out? Well, when did you think that Xana was passed out? People pass out and then they wake up. Like, yeah, I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to crash. Or like, oh my God, I'm drunk. I'm just need to go to bed. And like, yeah, I pass out of my bed, but then I wake up the next morning, you know? So I think what Brent Turvey was going to say is that there need to be clarity here. Like Dylan and Bethany, what do you mean you called them over? Because what Hunter Johnson is saying is that they were unresponsive, not waking up. Why didn't you call 911 right there? Why would you call Emily to tell her about it? And I think there's a simple answer for this, because we are told that we can't call the cops. And it's just that simple, because it's the truth. These girls aren't calling the cops because guess what? They're told not to by Greek life. So but then Hunter comes over and tells them to call, and then they're like, okay, we can call now because someone told us to call. I would have been like, no, you motherfucking call. I'm not calling. You call. The activity of Hunter Johnson is number 3. Oh my God. Wow. Wasn't expecting to see that as number 3. After the arrival of Emily Allant and Hunter Johnson, 911 was called 11:56 a.m. When officers arrived on scene minutes later, they encountered Hunter Johnson inside the residence. Hunter reported that he had arrived about 15 to 20 minutes prior to law enforcement. Oh my God. For you to even think that and to say that, you guys understand that there's a big problem there. Law enforcement was there within just minutes of that 911 call. And if you just got there at 11:55, 911 call is at 11:56. They're there at 11:58, 9. You know, you're never thinking to yourself that was 15 or 20 minutes. You're like, holy shit! Thank God you're here. You know, but that's a problem for me. It's always been 15, 20 minutes prior to law enforcement, and entered the home at the request of his girlfriend, Emily Allant. Hey, go over there and see what's going on. Those girls are all freaked out. I want to know if Emily Allant got off the phone with I want to know if Emily got off the phone with Dylan and called Xana. That's what I would have done immediately. If I'm Emily Allant and Dylan fucking tells me this shit, what? Stop. I'm okay, girl. I'll send Hunter over there. We'll come over. And then I'd be making a phone call and calling Xana. So Johnson immediately admitted to entering and moving around within the house, moving a knife from the kitchen to the beer pong table on the second floor to be used for his own self-defense, and checking the pulse of one of the victims. Law enforcement documented this activity. However, it is unknown what other movements throughout the home occurred that could have altered the existing evidence. Basically, just because that's all he says he did, is that all he did? Law enforcement document. Okay, these evidence dynamics are not noted as detrimental in subsequent collection or examination efforts, despite having a negative impact on chain of custody and related evidence integrity. They're making it seem like, again, this was just a pristine crime scene. And I know that it just was not. I know that Cy Ray does not think that. And that's why I just think his book trolls them. Evidence dynamics, multiple officers. On officer body cams, multiple officers can be observed entering the first floor entrance, moving through the different rooms, up both sets of stairs, and walking around on different floors. Oh, yeah. 500. Holy shit, okay. Well, we're going to start printing those off. Every single one of those 500 fucking pages. I'm going through those with a fine comb. That motherfucker's grass. I will find him. We're just getting shit done over here, guys. That motherfucker's going down. It's a Sunday, guys. Should we do some shots today? Bella, you want to do some shots? Do you guys know that I love reading my comment section after I've had a couple beverages? That's the highlight of my fucking week. I think I need to start coming live when I want to have a couple beverages and go to my comment section and just point some, the wild comments of the week. And then my wild comments back. So back over here. While somewhat unavoidable, these movements throughout the home could have altered and even obliterated existing evidence. You think? There we go. What's number? Oh. What the fuck? 4. Okay. There we go. They are not noted as detrimental, and they should be. Now, that was just A's, one, and there was 4 of them. Now, crime scene security, interview of suspect, integrity of the scene. A basic consideration with respect to preserving the integrity of witness and suspect interviews is the immediate separation of persons at the scene. This helps to prevent collusion. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, thank you. My motherfucking Borg, bitch. It's not a Borg? It is a Borg. Schmorgenborg. Thanks, cheers. It's just water, guys, don't worry. I need a new name for this Borg. I'm going to Florida and at the end of August, and I'm gonna bring my Borg everywhere I go. I'm gonna make the people that I'm going there with have Borgs too. These bitches better have some good ass names for their Borgs. Otherwise, I'll be renaming them. Have you tasted a Buzzball? Oh my god. The only reason I drink Buzzballs is because it's a woman-owned business, so I just like to support them. So cheers. Wait, what did we have shots of? This is sake. And it's supposed to be hot, but it's cold right now. Shots are always a good idea. Hey, they said keep the Sabbath day holy, man. If I can keep it holy. Holy hell. All right, let's go back to this. So cheers. Ooh. So yeah, he has an issue with the immediate separation of the witnesses that didn't happen. This helps to prevent collusion and narrative manipulation before or in the moment of a preliminary law enforcement interview. Law enforcement personnel failed with respect to this basic duty of care. Specific failures which prevent reliability when with respect to the statements taken at the scene and resulted in the abandonment of physical evidence included the following. Number one, as observed on law enforcement body cams, all witnesses were allowed to gather together outside on the street for an extended period of time within law enforcement view, but well out of earshot. As observed on law enforcement body cam, none of the surviving witnesses from inside the home were properly interviewed on scene by responding officers. This is generally done to get a preliminary or rough version of events by those who observed it firsthand. It also better informs the safe entry of law enforcement, the search for others that may be or should be in the home, and evidence search / preservation efforts. Without this information, it is difficult to separate victims from suspects once inside the scene, the result of which could be additionally tragedy. Like tragic motherfuckers. They just walked in there and could have been damn ambushed. It's so true. It was so fucking crazy to think that, I mean, there was just no. Do you guys have any safety? Do you care about your own personal safety? And that's just what kind of should just like, I don't know, maybe just police officers just think they're Superman. But I mean, I don't know. So again, observed on law enforcement body cams, the witnesses gathered outside of the crime scene were allowed to leave the scene by law enforcement prior to being subject to a preliminary interview and identity confirmation. So it's like, we have no idea who really truly was there. Okay. Before you just like said, hey, why don't you guys all come down to the station? Which I still have yet to see. Where is that even happening on body cam? I have to go back and check. So yeah. Now, abandoned forensic evidence, as observed on law enforcement body cam and later law enforcement reports, there was negligent failure and professional abandonment with respect to reported crime scene evidence. This extreme professional abandonment, which evidences a lack of crime scene education, training, and experience, includes the following. So when anybody would be answering a question like, well, based on my training and experience, the fuck it's based on your training and experience, because nobody would ever train you like this. So I love how he says it like that. So again, another point here for Brent Turvey. Like, I'm so sick and tired of hearing based on your training and experience. It clearly didn't fucking work. Fuck your basic training and experience. I don't give a shit. You suck. Okay? Like, you suck. And it's okay. Just admit it. Like, people suck at things. Just find something else to do. As observed on law enforcement body cams, all of the witnesses, including the surviving housemates, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, were allowed to leave the scene by law enforcement without being examined for blood evidence, injury, or trauma, without the examination or collection of their clothing or shoes. I think they should have had to leave in ambulances and go get blood tested to see what their alcohol was like. All the shit was like right there. I mean, if you're going to write in a PCA that people were, had this frozen shock and everyone's just like out of their gourd mind, shouldn't they go to the hospital? Get checked out? Best chat on the streets, bitches. Woo! Yeah. I love seeing so many green beans. Best chat on YouTube. Hi, Lana, aka Firecracker. Gorgeous mods. And one handsome dude. And to a wonderful chat peeps. I have been listening because I lose a lot of what Lana says if I keep reading the chats. I know it's hard to do both, guys. Sending love to Bella. You both rock stars. Black Cat, Karen, $999.99. You just rock, girl. You rock me like a hurricane. Thank you. Everyone feels like it's just the best chat, best place in the land. And then you know what? Karen's like, fuck this, man. 10 of you guys need to turn green. Karen, you rock. Everybody should be having some wine today. What are you guys having for, Italians like to have their dinners early on Sundays. So I think I want an Italian, good old, I think I want like a chicken piccata or like a chicken marsala today with like a little bit of like a pasta on the side with a nice big salad. Yeah. Truth, transparency, and common sense. Whiskey, fuck yeah, girl. Chili bean, get it, girl. On Wednesdays, we have, it's basically buy one, you can make it a double over here. Whiskey Wednesday at one of my friends' bars. Yeah, it's just great. Come in on Wednesday, you want a shot of whiskey, you get a double, no additional cost. I think they have to charge you like $1 because it's illegal if you do it, but it's free. So yeah. Damn, I'm coming to Ohio. Oh God, Wednesdays is the day, man. You like whiskey? Wednesdays, whiskey dick Wednesdays, man. There's a reason people don't have sex here on Wednesday nights because everybody has whiskey dick. So they make up for it on Thursday when it's ladies' night. So we already knew all this. So it's great. It's great that, Brent Turvey feels how we feel. Now, the first floor bathroom. So as evidence in the crime scene photos and evidentiary reports, law enforcement generally photographed but did not document and collect, aka process, the first floor bathroom. He has a problem with that. It had a trash can, but unlike the other bathrooms in the home, there were limited hygiene and cleaning products, no floor mat, and no towels. The trash can, the toilet, and bathtub/shower should have been carefully documented and photographed. Okay, great. Just to make sure there was no cleanup efforts in there. And test for DNA. Now we get to where I was screaming this. And remember I told you guys it was from, I said, you guys, if you guys ever seen the Amanda Knox case, Foxy Noxy, okay. They tested like the feces in the toilet in that case. Okay. Well, here I was flipping out in this case when I saw the second bathroom and I'm like, nobody tested that piss. Nobody tested that toilet paper. Here. As evidence in crime scene photos and evidentiary reports, law enforcement generally photographed but did not document and collect, aka process, evident clothing on the floor, footwear, towels, floor mats, dirty laundry from the hamper, clothing from inside the washer/dryer, the trash, the inside of the shower stall, or apparent urine and toilet paper. And I'm like, thank God. Okay. I don't believe Amanda Knox killed Meredith, by the way. But I will say that how the fuck do you not test that? I'm just curious if would it come back to being Lakeland McComas's? And my guess is that no. Okay. But it's definitely a girl. Because I'm over here like, who takes a piss as a guy and then takes toilet paper and is patting down their dick? I mean, I don't know. There may be some people, I guess. Okay. But it's usually like little kids because you're, teaching them. But come on, man. Who peed in that toilet and wiped themselves and didn't flush it? I want to know who. If if there's a piece of evidence in this case that, Lana, you could pick anything. I want to know whose piss and toilet paper that is. Why? Well, because I want to see. I want to see if it's Dylan's. Dylan said that she didn't go to the, she didn't go use the bathroom over there. She didn't do anything. I want to know who didn't flush. I want to know who is a non-flusher. I just don't think it would be Lakeland, but maybe she records it and you can hear her flushing the toilet. Okay. I just want to know who's a non-flusher, who's dirty. Who's dirty in that house? Allie Tally. Ooh, what if it comes back to a boy and it's not Ethan? What if somebody took a piss in there and then blew their nose or something and threw it? I mean, for them not to test that is wild. Non-flusher and dick wiper. Who are you? What if it was Molly? Okay. I don't believe that it was Lakeland. That's my point. I don't believe that Lakeland would have used the restroom there and then just left it like that. I'm just going to go out on a limb. She became a teacher. I don't think that that's her. It's super important to know, what if it wasn't exactly Heather? What if it wasn't Dylan or Bethany? Yeah. Yes. And how about what guy would it be? If it is not anybody in that house's, okay, that's exculpatory for anybody that would be in that defendant's chair if it's not theirs. I could see it being Molly's. I can see Molly just, I don't know, forgetting to flush. Anyways, but this is, so for the record here, none of this stuff was taken and tested. That's wild. Everybody should say that this is crazy. It wasn't even preserved. All of these items should have carefully documented and photographed, collected into evidence, examined for bloody transfer and cleanup efforts, and tested for DNA. And remember, we even found a dab of blood in the trash can. Okay. I'm just saying, these people, this isn't Moscow Police Department. This is the lab workers. This is the Idaho State Police. They fucking suck. Idaho State Police forensics suck 5 dicks at a time. Take that. They are horrible. But then when you actually get this timeline of truly how this house was processed, you guys are going to fall over. The lab workers didn't come in there to do anything until November 18th. November 17th. They did what they did on the 13th. Then they have the Idaho State Police come in on the 14th, right? They were with them there the November. They just did bare minimum shit. But then they do nothing in that house on November 15th or 16th. Nobody does anything. And then on November 17th and 18th, the lab people come down. Trash. The third floor bathroom. So as evidence in the crime scene, so we can see that the towels, the floor mat, nothing. None of that shit was taken. All of those items should have carefully been documented in photographs, all that shit. Based on review of number 5 here. Based on a review of the provided evidence, none of the areas in the home, to include areas of potential cleanup, were examined with presumptive chemical. Can you guys believe this? I thought that it was. So, I have an issue with this because I thought that it was. I thought that luminol and blue star, and it's no, it was only over. It wasn't done in areas where to test if there was a cleanup. So, the bathtub, the sinks. You guys, be honest. If you go to a bar, do you use their toilet paper or do you drip dry? Girls, be honest. I'm curious. Why the fuck would I want to touch and put to my vag? All you fucking people that touch all that shit. And wouldn't you rather drip dry? What if you wear no panties? Oh my God. You just take your hand dab it around, then just go wash it. Lauren's like, I use the TP. I have no problem. I use this. I use the cover on the seat. Oh God. Woo. That's just chafing the shit out of your lips, girl. Look out. I do use it if they have it. Question. Lauren making me laugh. TP definitely. Just every day, doesn't matter where I'm at, I'm using the toilet paper. Drip dry. Makes you think about things though, right? Give it a little shake and go on with your day. Thanks, Sarah. You know, these are the type of, okay, when I started zoning out, when people are talking like back in school, I would think about wild shit like this. I'd be like, I wonder if that person's a drip dryer. I wonder if that person is a drip dryer. And she brings her own wipes and my fucking handyman, my mom purse. What do you need? I gotcha. That's why girls go in doubles to the bathroom, guys. Shit. Just had to ask. Just that's where my mind was thinking of it, all this toilet paper shit. So yeah, they just didn't do shit here. Such field testing is both standard and essential with respect to, and now think about this, you guys. This is, you cannot put this on MPD. This is supposed to be state of the art people that are like, oh, we got the best, it's so great. Yeah, Idaho State Police Laboratory. Yeah, no, they suck. The CSI people suck. Nobody thought to themselves, well, hey, there are no fucking, trails out of this motherfucker. It would seem like that the person didn't leave the home. So maybe we can see if there was a cleanup here. I mean, I think a third grader would offer that up as a possibility. If you play like a game with it. Hey, where do you think the bad guy went? Here's the board game. I think a third grader would say, maybe they cleaned themselves before they left. Oh, great job, Tommy. Now, in early January of 2023, the defense intervened to preserve and collect extensive physical evidence left behind at the crime scene and prevent its destruction by law enforcement. Much of this evidence had received observable blood transfer evidence in the form of contact smears, drops, and spatter. To be clear, law enforcement negligently failed to preserve and collect a long list of items from victim bedrooms, other bedrooms, and the house in general. They also inappropriately released personal items belonging to the victims and surviving housemates before independent examination efforts could be made, as indicated by the supplemental narrative provided below. Yeah, it's just like, at the instruction of the defense, law enforcement returned to the scene on 1/6/2023 and collected 10 items to include bed frames, mattresses. We know this. Now he wants to talk about, Report 140. Remember this one? Ann Taylor Defense Counsel was granted permission to go through these items, blah, blah, blah. Did you put up the one and it was a list of all this shit? You need to show the one that Blaker's just breaking shit and throw it in the car as is. Like, fuck, we just had to break this shit to get this back down here. What? You broke it? Like, come on, man. What a fucking idiot. That's what you would do? If that was my kid's case, I'm going to go down there and say, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Like, why are you breaking shit? Just go get another fucking vehicle. You guys like see where my head goes? Now I got the whole chat talking about their wiping, Do you wipe forward or backwards? Are you guys like, when you put your toilet paper on, do you even care if it's like over, under? Are you like that anal? Like, oh my, No, I care more about the toilet paper quality. It should be noted that this extreme level of physical evidence abandonment and the improper release of physical evidence back to family members and those who need to be eliminated as suspects, they weren't eliminated, is rare. It's just rare. Primarily because it is understood that everything with blood on it needs to be examined and tested. You would think. Moreover, it is generally understood that suspect exclusion efforts in residential homicides must begin first with those known to be inside the home at or around the time of the murders. It's just generally understood. Oh my God, do you see this? He's basically saying Dylan and Bethany, they were not cleared. Ah. Oh boy. The barking dog. According to an affidavit by Brett Payne of the Moscow PD, the third floor consisted of 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The bedroom on the west side of the floor was later determined to be Kaylee's. Hereafter, I later learned from review of Officer Noon's body-worn camera, there was a dog in the room when Moscow police officers initially responded. Do you want to know why he had to say it like that? Because I have to act so dumb about what happened that day with the doggy. The dog belonged to Kaylee and her ex-boyfriend, Jack DeCour. We remember all the things that he wrote, right? And so here he says, at approximately 4:17 a.m., a security camera located at 112 King Road, a residence immediately to the northwest of 11222, picked up distorted audio, blah, blah, blah. We know all that, right? Law enforcement discovered the dog Murphy in Kaylee's room on the bed, calmly sitting. So that was like the end of the quote. Okay, calmly sitting. The dog did not have blood on its feet or fur and did not seem interested in the fact that its owner had been killed with the body just a few yards away. And nobody, so he's basically saying, you don't think that this is odd behavior? That a dog is just, yeah. Mm-hmm. At 4:17 a.m., okay, I'm sorry. Law enforcement later discovered dog tracks inside the bedroom and outside on the open balcony door. What I tell you guys, remember I was like, man, that outside barking. I was like, if Murphy got out on that deck patio, how did, like what? It's crazy. Everyone with a dog knows. Exactly. Exactly. How about this? Listen to this. At 4:17 a.m., the dog had started barking. This lasted for around 30 minutes and then abruptly stopped. The relevance of this in relation to the law enforcement theory that Brian Kober left the crime scene at 4:20 has apparently not been investigated by law enforcement. Basically saying the dog is continuing to bark. And then all of a sudden the dog stops barking. There's what appears to be, there's paw prints outside. And now you're telling me there's paw prints inside in Kaylee's room. Well, that's funny. Where are those photographs? Did they not release those? Exactly. Dog was on the balcony, not wandering free outside. And you want to know what's interesting too is, did somebody put Murphy out on the balcony and make it seem like that the dog was missing? Oh my God. Murphy ran off. What? Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think of like the clever little ways that whatever happened beginning at 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. in that house. The psychology that was going on in that house from 2 to 4. If nobody left the bedroom door, like, how did the dog get back in? How did anything get closed? Like, what's going on here? The dog's just immediately stopped barking. How? And it's like, well, I don't know. Maybe they just closed the door. Check this out. What if you just close the door from outside, like that slider? Would we be able to hear Murphy truly barking once you just close the balcony? If in fact that is even the dog that's barking, okay? Maybe the dog could still be barking its balls off in there. But just because you close the patio slider, then, you know, it's still barking. But there was no investigation into any of it. But Dylan was adamant. If you actually listen to her interviews, she's over here talking about that the person that got into the house, that they went through Kaylee's slider. Oh, Mary, thank you for that. Suspect bias. A review of investigative efforts indicates that none of those at the scene or from inside the house were questioned or investigated as though they were a suspect. The vast majority of investigative efforts by law enforcement, e.g., like Moscow PD and the FBI, focus on the theory that there was only one suspect. Exactly. Here's me. Exactly. Why? Where would you ever think that? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? For it to not even be a thought in your mind that it was more than one person, that defies logic. That has to be an option right off the bat until you have all of your options until you can eliminate things. And they're just never even talking about it like that. They focus on the theory that there was only one suspect, that this suspect entered without permission, and that this suspect did not reside in the home. Oh, shit. Like, wow. Do you see what he's writing in here? He is saying things in here that is just unbelievable. Once Brian Koberger became a suspect, no other investigative avenues were pursued. None. That's the truth. All of Koberger's activity before and after the homicides became a matter of intense law enforcement focus and was subsequently viewed through a theory of guilt. Notably, none of the defendant's activity investigated by law enforcement has been found to be criminal or suggestive of attempting to evade criminal charges. And now this should put everybody having millions of questions, which is, I thought he had remember that there was no report that's saying he had gloves on and he was separating his trash. Do you understand what this report is claiming right here? Is that Brian Koberger, that law enforcement could not find, has been found to be criminal or suggestive of attempting to evade criminal charges. That's why it started. That was a big one for me, because we need to ask the questions, which are, okay, where is this being said that Brian was, what report has Brian separating trash with gloves on and whatever, plastic baggies and all that bullshit? Because I want to know about that. I want to know where that came from. I mean, I already know where it came from. It came from the feds. It came from Pennsylvania. Okay. Or it came from two distinct people, which would be Payne or Gilbertson. That's it. You have the FBI, you have Pennsylvania people, and you have Payne or Gilbertson. So who started that rumor? I would say that if he didn't have a birthday coming up and if it wasn't going about to be expired, then you could put that in that column. But because of that, then he had no choice but to do that. Think about this. He went, he put himself on camera too. Suspect vehicle footage. Law enforcement have theorized that a vehicle or vehicles seen on a security footage observed driving by or near the crime scene that night matches the description of the vehicle registered to and driven by defendant. The relevance of this theory rests on the assumption that the defendant is guilty of these crimes. Despite law enforcement theories related to the defendant's movements that night, there is no evidence or testimony which conclusively identifies either a suspect vehicle involved in this case or the defendant's vehicle as being connected to this crime. This is based on the following facts and evidence. Related reports and testimony from FBI experts have failed to conclusively identify the suspect vehicle or vehicles in this case. The failure to be absolutely clear and forthcoming about this evident fact would be evidence of bias. The defendant's vehicle is a white 2015 Hyundai Elantra, license plate CFB 8708. This was theorized by law enforcement to have been a suspect vehicle associated with this case. It was subsequently seized by the Pennsylvania State Police, transported to the Moscow Police Department, and examined. As will be discussed in the subsequent section of this report, the suspect's involvement in committing these homicides would have been covered in blood as a result of the extraordinary amount of blood spatter and necessary blood transfers. This includes hands, arms, legs, feet, and related clothing, which would have transferred onto and into any suspect vehicle in relation to opening doors, entering seats, adjusting the seat or mirrors, closing the door, inserting keys, using the gear shift, and using the steering wheel. All of these being necessary actions or movements for the successful operation of a motor vehicle. These transfers can be microscopic and can be detected using presumptive chemical reagents such as luminol and blue star. Despite an extensive and exhaustive forensic examination of the defendant's vehicle for bloody clothing, blood transfers, or any other evidence related to these crimes, down to the metal, none was found. This has essentially excluded the defendant's vehicle as being related to the commission of these crimes. The failure to be absolutely clear and forthcoming about this evident fact would be evidence of bias. Points of entry or exit, aside from the windows, which are impractical or evidently undisturbed, there are 3 points. First floor, we know that. There is no physical evidence to support this, which they say, which is on the second floor, there is a sliding glass door, which was found to be opened by law enforcement. It has been inferred that this is the location where the suspect or suspects may have entered or at least exited. There is no physical evidence to support this, as again, there would need to be the requisite blood transfer. If an intruder left the house through this door, having left it open upon entry, there would need to be bloody footwear patterns on the floors from the bloody shoes or feet, both leading up to and out the sliding glass door. On the third floor, there's a sliding glass door in Kaylee Gonsalves's room, which opens up to a balcony. This balcony is where dog tracks were found. Again, this is a typo here. He put that they were found in Kaylee's bedroom, but we all know that it's Maddie's. And so there are sharp force injuries to Maddie's left forearm, and hand that could be best described as defensive in nature. This indicates that she was awake and attempting to block a sharp force attack for a very brief period of time before becoming overwhelmed. That's new. Given the context of the attack against Kaylee and the variety of injuries to Madison, it is likely that at least some of her wounds, the sharp force wounds, that they were inflicted when she was no longer able to defend herself. Kaylee suffered from multiple forms of lethal force. I'm not going to talk about all that because we already know about that. To be clear, Kaylee suffered from extensive sharp force injuries well beyond that suffered by the other victims. All of this, none of that is seen. This context of multiple weapons and multiple types of lethal force suggests multiple attackers, as will be discussed in a subsequent section. There is no evidence which suggests that either Madison or Kaylee were attacked out of their bed, as their feet are generally free of blood transfer from bleeding. I would agree, but I'm curious about the whole dragging somebody into a place. He is saying that the evidence suggests that after both victims were killed or unresponsive, they were posed in their shared bed. Kaylee was moved from a position with her head on her pillow to partially atop of Madison. Then the comforter was placed over them both. And my question would be is, if I'm placing, and I have bloody gloves, because I just did what I did, if I'm placing then the comforter over somebody, where is, I want to see the comforter in terms of like, is there an area that you can think that like if I have to grab that to place that over, like it'd be bloody? You know what I mean? I wonder if there's anything that can be I said, where was the comforter during the attack? That would be a question I have for Brent Turvey. Is where was this comforter during the attack? Is that comforter normally on Madison's bed anyways? Did it come from a different room? And I'm just curious of where was it during the attack? And then, was it just like scrunched up down at the bottom? Again, the extensive and close-up nature of the attacks on Kaylee and Madison, along with the blood spatter evident in the room and the moving of Kaylee's body, are evidence that the suspects' upper bodies, face, hair, arms, and chest would have been covered in blood. All available physical and blood evidence suggests that these were the first victims. Well, yeah, they're the first. They're the first victims of one of the attacks. If the attacks happened at different times, He also says that they were specifically sought out on the third floor, and that the suspects then moved downstairs to the second floor, where at least one of the suspects was observed by Xana. This would have been covered in blood. Like the person would have been covered in blood. Again, I think what he's leaning towards here is that if these people were covered in blood, right, and there's no mixtures, as you're going to see, what this starts leaning towards is that somebody took a shower Okay. And if your hair is all wet, okay, and your hair's down, and when you're walking fast or whatever, and your hair is swinging, right? Same thing if you were to wash a dog. That if you're in that common area, I'm just curious of if that could be the way this blood was diluted versus like something wasn't wiped up, but it was somebody still being like frantic in between kills because they're just off their fucking rocker. I don't know how. I just would love for someone to do a reenactment of to try to mimic the diluted blood. You know? So, second floor, Ethan and Xana were discovered in Xana's bedroom. Ethan was in her bed and Xana was on the floor next to it. Now, I think what needs to be talked about is in context here. If Xana's on the floor and if it's Ethan's phone that's next to Xana, I think that is really, really important. Though a complete linear construction of events is not possible, so they could not do that, by the way. The available physical evidence supports the following relevant events and conclusions. Xana ordered and subsequently received a DoorDash food delivery at 3:59. Here's me. Or maybe that's stage 2, or I said, why, right? Like, how are you making that statement? Like, why aren't you questioning the fact that a DoorDash order would take that long to get there? It never would, ever would. Also, just because it was ordered on her phone, don't you think it's kind of illogical then that it wouldn't be Xana's phone that would be right next to where Xana was? Why would Ethan's phone be next to Xana in the room? So I said, I would have, just because someone writes this, I don't give a fuck what they write. I have questions about it, and I want me to tell you other things, and I want you to say, is it possible or not? And I believe that he would say, yeah, that's possible. If you're all into this whole staging, doesn't extending Xana's life by making it seem like she ordered DoorDash, isn't that a pretty big stage? It's a pretty big stage. Making it seem like Xana's still alive when she wasn't. She received her food on the first floor. Remember, we caught Dylan in a big, massive lie? Not a lie, but when Dylan wants to talk about how they go and get their food, and she's like, yeah, when we go down, we put the light on. But Ethan, he just wouldn't. Remember, I'm like, when we go down to get food. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? We go down. Like, your kitchen's right there. You don't go down anywhere. I said, oh, but you go down when you go down to the first floor to get your fucking DoorDashes. That's where the fuck you go. And so Dylan gives herself away. And remember, during all those interviews, nobody knew. Oh, well, when she's giving interviews and talking, you'd have to look at the dates because we didn't know about the DoorDash until after the arrest of Brian Kohlberger. And so when she's talking to like Aaron Wilmanson or whoever the fuck else, like, she doesn't know any of that. So this is evident in crime scene photos, which is she received her food on the first floor, then moved it upstairs to the kitchen. This is evident in crime scene photos. No, what's evident in crime scene photos, not that it was Xana. It was evident that, show me that picture being right there at the front door. Okay. So that food was moved. We don't know who moved it though, because the bag was never taken and tested. Right. This is evident in crime scene photos. Xana was later reported. Now, this is amazing to me. Later reported to have been active on TikTok at approximately 4:12. This was reported. He has the extraction. And this is why this language was so fucking critical for me. Xana was later reported to have been active on TikTok at approximately 4:12. This is her last documented activity. And I'm over here like, come on, man. Like, chill out here for a second. Phone, it is not, the phone activity does not mean that it was Xana on that phone. And the more that you can actually like go with that and vibe with that is to say, why is Xana's phone in the bed and Ethan's phone's next to Xana in the middle of the room? Doesn't that look like it was Xana had Ethan's phone? And guys, just because they say that, Xana's phone, listen, I can go on your phone right now and sign into my DoorDash. Okay. And it would show that Lana made that DoorDash order. If you go through the DoorDash people, it's going to show my account. Yep, I made that order. But let's start looking at some cell phones. Is it from my cell phone that I made that order? I can make it from my account, but did I use my cell phone to make that order? So there's just some things I have some questions on. And everybody should be asking, well, Xana, why aren't you writing the fact that Xana placed that order, or that phone placed that order at 2:15? 2:15. You guys, people don't drop off orders at 4:00 when you order food at 2:15. Bring the fuck Molly back the fuck in here. And let's talk about when Xana made this order, where was Molly? Molly was in fucking Pullman. So why would Molly ever come without the order? She would wait 15 minutes to fill the order and then she would drive. She was in Pullman. Show me that Molly was in fucking Moscow and had to go to Pullman to get it and come back. Show me that. Because I'm going to tell you this. Why would they ever give it to a DoorDasher, Molly, when somebody that's in Pullman right by the place to grab it? Why would that even be offered? And so what I think Molly did, and there's evidence of it, why I think this, because Molly in her interview totally blows up her own spot. And she talks about the fact there's two ways that we check this. The interview from the guys when they're like, yeah, it was really weird that she actually ordered it too. She ordered it and delivered it. That's what the interview from the guys at Jack in the Box says. That's why it was like, yeah, it was weird. She ordered it and delivered it. Why do you think we want to talk to Molly so bad? And Molly, you didn't do anything wrong. Okay? Molly, 2 G's. Let's have a conversation. That could get you a hotel for like, what, the whole month? $60 a night over there at wherever the fuck it is that you all chill. But this to me, and I think that Brent Turvey would agree with what I'm saying. It just comes down to like, this was never investigated. None of this was investigated. But why would the phones be? Why would Ethan's phone be next to Xana in the middle of the room, and Xana's phone be in the bed? Okay, so again, this is me saying, yeah, her phone. Like, so why I'm writing phone, not her, is because you cannot. Xana's phone was doing shit. Okay. We need to walk it all the way back in what's truly going on with Xana that night. When's the last sighting of Xana? Who's the last sighting with Xana? When did they go home? When did Xana get home? When did Ethan go home? Why are they calling each other if they're together? It's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. Yes, I can't believe Ann Taylor didn't send the investigator to. Yeah, and I'm shocked that they're over here just accepting that the crime happened during this time that they're trying to portray that it did. Like, get the fuck out of here. How how can you say that this couldn't happen earlier? Because if Maddie and Kaylee are done moving and not texting or doing anything on their phones after 2:53, you think that they both went to bed at the same time just after like mass fucking blowing people up? Though you would get on your phone still and look at your she didn't call her boyfriend. Maddie didn't call her boyfriend to say, you know, everybody when they're drunk, they're all like horny, happy, lovey. Like, oh my God, I missed you. I wish you were here. Come on. Please. So, because she was attacked and found dead in her bedroom on the floor, it is evident that Xana subsequently retreated to her bedroom but was followed. And I'm like, why is that evident? Why couldn't she have been ambushed when she, I don't know, either opened the door or maybe somebody else brought her the DoorDash? And when they brought it in her room, it was a fucking complete ambush. And then we're going to talk about the fact that at 3:54 there was a, is that you? You know, are you lost? Well, was that really Xana or was it an automated from DoorDash? I'm just like, when I see these words evident, it's evident. And I'm like, evident? What was evident? Xana suffered extensive sharp force injuries along with abrasions and contusions of, you know, all of this, I'm not going to read that, but right here, and wounds extending into the bones of the hand. So she grabbed that knife. Additionally, additional injuries include scrapes and bruises on the face, torso. I thought that was interesting. Is there any evidence? Did they ever say, was Xana's shirt, like there's stabbings in her shirt, right? Her shirt was stabbed. It wasn't like someone put a sweatshirt over her like afterwards, right? Now, because I'm just interested in this whole the torso. These injuries appear to be the result of extended attack, which ended once she was no longer fighting back, and that's why it was like, dude, Xana fought her fucking ass off. Sick fucks. Whoever did this, Brian, anybody else, these sick motherfuckers. Xana was also the only victim with blood on her feet, evidencing the fact that she is the only victim attacked upright and out of bed. Again, because she encountered a suspect while eating her food and watching TikTok videos on the second floor. Let me explain something. That is not evident of that. Who has to be standing every time that they're fucking eating their food and watching TikTok? No, bitch, they sit down. They're in bed eating and laying down and watching TikTok. I mean, just to see this is to say, I can't get down with that. But what's evident of something like that would be to use the cell bright and let's look at her steps. Let's see when this phone was moving. When did the phone stop moving? God damn. Why is nobody using the health data? What the fuck is going on? But I'm sorry, but to say that it's evident that because she was eating her food and watching TikTok, that's what's evident? Get out of here. Come on. How do you guys eat your fucking food, man? I just stand up and stand in the middle of my room and eat my food and watch TikTok standing in the middle of my room. At 4:15 in the morning. Xana's going to go down because she thinks she could potentially run into, think about this. Xana has no panties on or no pants on, right? I'm going to go to my door that I could potentially run into the DoorDash driver with no fucking pants on. Come on, man. This is bad. you know. Um, the so I'm over here immediately. I say, no. How about we just get the cell bright of Xana, and we see. I mean, was she does she have all these steps on? You know, if she has her phone. When does her phone stop taking any steps? I'm just curious. And nobody, even the defense, isn't over here talking about it. Nobody's talking about any of these phones and their movement. It's pretty wild. What if Santa wasn't alive when that DoorDash was ordered? How about that? Does that ever cross anybody's mind? It's exactly what Jennifer Drake did. Let me just call my husband now, or like have his phone call me. Eldora, make sure you hit that send. Okay, yep. And now I'm just gonna have a conversation or act like I am, and then say, "Oh my God, I was on the phone with him when he got shot through the window. He was dead way before that." The attack suffered by Xana was incidental. Was incidental. Like basically, Xana wasn't supposed to die. It was incidental to the intended target of the attack, which will be discussed in a later section of this report. It is most reasonable to infer that she was attacked because she was a direct witness. How about this? What if Kaylee wasn't playing along with, like, if Dylan's over here like, oh my god, look, Dylan, look at there's, Xana and Ethan, oh my god, and Kaylee and Maddie are like, what the fuck did you do? Versus, oh my god, who did this? What if it was Xana, or what if it was Maddie and Kaylee that are like, Dylan, what the fuck did you do? What do you mean me? Well, yeah, you're the one that was home. We just got here. Where's Bethany? I mean, I don't fucking know. I'm just saying, like, what if Kaylee wasn't down with how this little description that Dylan found the bodies, let's just say, and that's why she starts blowing up Jack. You don't need to call. There's no reason to call for help because they're dead. Like there's no helping them. But oh my god, like Dylan's over here freaking like Dylan's. I'm just saying, and then the reason that Kaylee would have been taken out in a completely different manner is because Kaylee wasn't willing to play ball with the whole. If Kaylee's questioning, like, no, Dylan, you did something. I'm just saying, because we don't have the whereabouts of anybody, and if Maddie, I mean, why do the G's think that Maddie was the target? Why do people out there think that Maddie was the target? But yeah, look at the autopsy. I mean, because I'm with Brent Turvey on this. Like by textbook, look at what happened to Kaylee here. So Xana was incidental to the incident target to attack, which will be discussed later. It is most reasonable to infer that she was attacked because she was a direct witness to a suspect coming downstairs from the third floor. And then all I have to say is, well, then why wouldn't Dylan be killed? Because she's a witness too, right? The attack suffered in her bedroom, which involved an extensive defense throughout the entire space, was evidently sufficient to wake Ethan. So Ethan wakes up because of this. This would have necessitated the death to kill a living witness as well. A lot of people are in masks, right? I mean, it would prevent you from calling 911 though, too, right? I mean, I don't know. Didn't prevent fucking Dylan over here. Ethan did not present with blood on his feet, despite the floor of Xana's bedroom being covered with blood in many areas. This indicates that he was never fully upright and out of bed during his attack. I also want to know if all of these shoes that Ethan owned was accounted for. I mean, Ethan's naked. Also, but he doesn't even mention that. Like, Ethan's naked. So yeah, it looks like he would be in the bed, right? And he's saying that it would not have lasted very long, like Ethan. But then he's over here saying, though, you can't. And I agree with this, but I don't think that's necessarily that it had to be attacked at the same time. I agree that this would have woke up Ethan, right? And there's no way that Xana, unless she was to like jump on this dude from behind and try to like, if he starts attacking, Ethan, that she wouldn't run. But maybe she didn't run and she jumped on him. But he's basically saying that this couldn't have been by one person, that they were attacked simultaneously, because there was 2 attackers upstairs, and when they come down, oh shit, now we're running into Xana. And it's like, well, what time are you putting the attack of Maddie and Kaylee happening? Because based off of the white car, 407, I mean, what are we talking about here? How did Xana not run into the killers before that? Because she's going downstairs to supposedly get her food, and that was at 4. So how would Xana miss the killers in the first place before? You get what I'm trying to say? So it doesn't. That's not jiving. If Xana goes downstairs to get the DoorDash, boom, got it. Because I got down there right when she put it down, so 4:00. So then she comes right back upstairs. Let's just hypothetically say. And so what? Think about this. Xana's just totally awake. Hey, you know what? Because I'm going to go straight to the kitchen, because I'm going to put the bag in there, because I'm going to get a plate, and I'm going to put all this shit on a plate that I'm going to eat. Or maybe like it wasn't Xana eating it at all and it was somebody else. Even though Bethany and Dylan were the starving ones, okay, and wanted to go get food. But so then I put all this stuff on my plate, and then I leave the kitchen. So wow, amazing that she goes to the kitchen, puts it on a plate. She's still standing. Wow, the killers must have just missed her. And she walks to her bedroom to what? To get in it and eat her food. Then she doesn't hear anybody enter. Then she doesn't hear anybody like, where's the dog? Because at 4, this is when Dylan's over here talking about, oh, and then we have this whole thing about Dylan and Xana never collide and see each other. It's preposterous. And it all starts with this alleged beginning of the time of the crime. This beginning of the time of the crime is a fucking joke. This did not begin at no motherfucking 4:10. Sorry. Sorry. It just didn't. Then you go over here. So he had defensive wounds as well. These defensive wounds indicate that he was awake and blocking a sharp force weapon with his right and left hands from multiple directions. The multiple directions is the very interesting part. What do you have? You're just one person, 2 weapons in both hands? Or is it 2? It is not reasonable to think that Ethan would have remained in his bed after waking up or being awake while Xana was being attacked in front of him. This evidence and context begin to suggest the existence of the second attacker. This issue will be addressed in a later section of this report, unless Ethan was killed separately at a separate time. Unless Ethan and Xana weren't killed at the same time. And you're like, well, Lana, how the fuck is that possible? Well, because it's very simply possible. Let's talk about that explorer coming there at 4:24 in the morning. Let's talk about if he was lured over to say, oh my God, there's something wrong with Xana. I can't wake her up. She's like passed out. Will you just come? I don't get whatever fight you guys had in here, but you got to come help me because she's not waking up. And then he comes over and then he's attacked. But why would he be naked? He wouldn't have been naked. So then you have to start asking yourself the question of could Ethan have been killed first and then Xana was killed? Because when she comes home after doing whatever the fuck she was going and doing, like if you're going to talk about context, go look at their phones. Their phones do not put them together. It's very bizarre. It just all comes back down to there was no investigation. And that's what, Turvey is over here reiterating. But he's not wrong to say that essentially if you're going to put them, hey, if you're going based off of the state's theory, it's definitely multiple people that killed people because that's the only way that it could happen. And I agree with that. But I'm saying the state's theory on when this started is backed by what? Dylan fucking Mortensen? Huh? That's a really bad backing, in my opinion. I don't give a fuck what some text message say or, those text messages, because they don't go in order by meaning Dylan didn't alert Bethany to a thing. Dylan didn't do anything with her device from 3:51 until 4:19 when she picked up the call from Bethany. And that's all that matters. Dylan didn't alert anybody to anything. Bethany called Dylan. And it would matter as to why she called her, what the true reason why she called Dylan at 4:19 and 7 seconds, why she didn't call Maddie or Xana or Ethan or Kaylee. Why did she call Dylan first? Because how it would look on your phone if you were Maddie and you were asleep, when you popped out and you heard whatever, you go to your phone and you would see that you had a missed call from who? Maddie. So wouldn't you be calling Maddie because that would be like right there on your phone? She calls Dylan. And I think it's because she heard Dylan scream. And if you go and you look and you ask yourself, why didn't Maddie calls Jack D a bunch, right? But then guess who she calls right before the phones go dead? She calls Xana and Bethany. Neither of which answer. At 2:53 in the morning, none of those two people are answering. Why is Maddie calling Xana? Why didn't she call Dylan? I could see why she didn't call Kaylee because she's with Kaylee, right? Well, maybe she didn't call Dylan because Dylan was, maybe they were calling about her. That Dylan's fucking nuts. Or maybe it's because of a DoorDash order that got personally handed off because they were outside. And that coincides exactly with what the police officers said. They were, we were just coming around, going right down before the Banfield pullover. Oh, yeah, that's right. But you did not come from back behind there because we have the cameras and we can show that you didn't make that loop. All these people lying. The extensive and close-up nature of the attacks on Xana and Ethan, along with the blood spatter and blood smears evident in the room, are evidence that the suspect's entire body would have been covered in blood. I don't disagree. Their coverings, whatever they're wearing. No murder weapon identified, despite intensive investigative efforts with respect to identifying the sharp force weapon or weapons used in this case. None have been identified. The same is true for the blunt force weapon or weapons used. To be clear, the murder weapons in this case remain unidentified and at large. Yep. Planning and precaution. The elements of planning and precaution demonstrated in the MO of the crime are low skill. This is somebody with low skill with respect to planning and execution, but high skill with respect to precaution. And it's like, okay, why? While planning, whatever planning may have taken place with respect to this crime, it resulted in an excessive number of victims with an excess of blood transfer and bloody clothing on the part of the suspects. This took additional time to both affect and clean up before they could leave. Precautionary acts. The precautionary acts in this case include the execution of living witnesses. So if you knew that there was a house full of 6 people, potentially, right? That means everybody that you're not planning on killing is could be a potential witness. How that could not be registered in the planning is laughable. Unless you actually killed when other people weren't home. Ding. So the cleanup of bloody hands, feet, footwear, and clothing before leaving. Fuck before leaving. It was also in between killings. Why are we mentioning that? I cannot kill 2 people upstairs and not get completely fucking naked and take those clothes, everything, my clothes, my gloves. I have to have another set of gloves and I have to have other murder weapons because there's no cross contaminating of the blood mixtures in any of the swabs. All of them, there is no blood from Kaylee and Maddie mixed with either Xana or Ethan or all of them. Why the fuck has nobody mentioned that? That tells you that this, even if it was one person, which that's their theory. So why aren't you saying that the person would have had to have changed after the killings upstairs? There is no mixtures in evidence that they were presenting in this courtroom to that effect. So you have to take off everything after you kill upstairs. And you would have to not just take it all off, okay? But you're going to have to put it somewhere. And so what type of, like, you want to talk about bringing a book bag in there? Okay, if I come with a book bag that has multiple other weapons in there, right? But then I have to take my clothes from kills upstairs number 1 and discard them, right? Then I have to put on different clothes. So those would have had to be in my bag. But then after I killed downstairs, I had to take those off. And I have to put them into this bag as well. And it's not just fucking t-shirt. I mean, we're talking about if Xana fought with somebody, you don't think that Xana got any like scratch, like nothing? What was under Xana's fingernails? I mean, Xana fought with this person for an extended period of time, allegedly. Xana didn't get any kicks in. She didn't get to kick him in the dick at all. None of the it's just, and then you have to put on clean clothes, right? Because you're going to leave and get into a car that, according to the state, right, it's his car. It's pretty crazy. So here. The cleanup of bloody hands, feet, footwear, and clothing before leaving, and the disposal of said clothing along with the weapons used. Direct evidence of this cleanup can be found in at least some of the diluted blood transfer, which was located in different areas of the home. And right here, this is basically Turvey saying without saying it, somebody took a shower, and that's why it's diluted. That they were wet, which would mean like that their hair is wet. Because what I mean, and then people take so that they took a shower and then they have a towel there, so they're just going to take that towel with them. Again, another thing that you're going to have to like put, you know, I mean, think about this. This is not fucking taking 15 goddamn minutes. This is not taking 30. But go back up to that 2:53 time. Go back up to the thing starting around 2:30. And then they have who had all the time in the world before when they were going to call, when they were ready to call 911? Who got to make that decision on when we're going to call people over? Why wouldn't you call people over if you were scared and want to come check on people? Why wouldn't you call them at 4:30? Like everyone's up. It's college. Why didn't you call, Hunter, Emily, and all them at 4:30? Maybe. So some of the diluted blood transfers, which was located in different areas of the home. Indirect evidence includes the absence of blood transfer from feet and hands, despite the movement of suspects within the home. The necessary opening of doors and the absence of blood footwear patterns at the scene in general. All of this would have required an extensive amount of time at the scene to clean, perhaps hours, which is inconsistent with the state's theory that these crimes were committed within a time interval less than 15 to 20 minutes subsequent to 4 a.m. There ain't no way you are selling this pipe dream to a jury. Unless you have an entire jury pool of people that end up being on the jury already saying that this man's guilty. Because nobody's listening to all this shit and saying that this is crazy. It just, your common sense tells you that it doesn't make sense. And then when you just find out that they did nothing to like, hey, this is your theory, but then they did nothing to bolster it. It's great. Okay, that's your theory. Now go knock out all this shit so you can fucking own this theory in a courtroom. God, it's just so simple. But they didn't do those things because they couldn't do those things. The number of suspects, at least 2 suspects were involved in this attack. This is indicated by the fact that multiple weapons were used against Kaylee, that multiple types of lethal force were used against Kaylee, and that Ethan and Xana appear to have been attacked at the same time. Well, Barbara Wolf has sold it to me that fucking Xana was attacked with multiple weapons. So was Maddie, and so was Kaylee. And then in and of itself, so what this person is just, now we're talking about weapons on a belt loop, but then you think that they left their sheath? No, sorry. This is inconsistent with the state's theory that these crimes were committed solely by one person. All of this expert shit, this is beyond a reasonable doubt. Like, this is when you're like, no, I cannot get past beyond a reasonable doubt. But then the question should come in is, well, just because multiple people committed the crime, that doesn't mean that Brian Kohlberg isn't one of them, dipshits. And that's why I'm over here like, you might need a little bit more, because that's fine. Okay, so multiple people were involved, but how is Brian Kohlberg not one of them? Well, because of his car. Because they're saying his car was used, right? Okay, like what else? How about if you move the time of the crime? Brian Kober's where at 2:53 when Maddie and Kaylee's phones just abruptly stopped being used. He's in Washington. So I don't know why you wouldn't be going that route. This began earlier. Unless there's evidence that it did not, which I don't know how there could not. Where's the evidence that this could not have happened starting at 2:30 or 2:30, 2:45, 2:53? What evidence is there to say that it did not start then? I don't give a fuck about when Dylan saw anything. Even if she did see something, it doesn't mean that she saw the beginning and the end or what. I mean, come on, that's wild. And they can say, well, because the white car isn't there yet. Well, if it's multiple people, Brian just came afterwards. Maybe he was just, hey, making sure that his little entourage here, hey, you guys did a great job. But Brian has no friends. So who do you do this with? I would use that I would use the Barnharts to my, I would flip the switch on that. I would say, you're going to have people come in here and hear how my client doesn't talk and hang out with people. Who'd he plan this with? And then it's going to come down to motive. And Brian doesn't know any of these people. I'm just saying, you present this case and then you show how the FBI lied about Brian's movements that entire night with his phone. Oh, and all that stuff. You show that to the jury, which would have been seen. Then you have like a Karen Reed case where it's like you're acquitting regardless just because of the fucking investigation at that point. He believes that there's definite signs of staging. Okay. Staging crime scene refers to an attempt to confuse or mislead law enforcement investigators by altering, fabricating, or planting evidence in relation to a crime scene. In the present case, a K-bar knife sheath was discovered in the crime scene by law enforcement. Evidence of staging with respect to this item of evidence is as follows. The sheath was found precariously placed just slightly under the body of Madison Mogan and partially covered by the comforter that was placed atop the midsection of her body by the suspects. It could not have fallen accidentally into this location. The sheath was new and unused, as indicated by the absence of damage or wear to the leather. The sheath was face down and had received only a few areas of minute blood spatter. While resting atop a sheet with significant impact spatter all around it. That's significant to me. The inconsistency of blood spatter, dispersion, and density indicate transfers occurring at different times. Yes. Which could potentially be the whole extra hitting in someone's face. It could be the, but he's saying that this had to have transferred at different times. I want to hear the opposite side of this. Under different conditions with different levels of intensity. I mean, these are, let's just put it this way. Richard Allen had none of this. The people that were on Richard Allen for as far as they didn't write reports. Do you understand that what people do in defenses sometimes is they go and get experts that just look at the other person's report. They don't never write a report though. Every single person that I've seen so far in this case from the defense has issued a fucking report. For example, in Richard Allen's case, his cell phone expert, his digital expert, she didn't issue a report. You know that she was called upon in the case like literally 2 months before it went to fucking trial? That in and of itself is ineffective assistance of counsel as far as I'm concerned. That's the most important thing in this case, in his case. And you hire and bring on a phone expert. I just can't even talk about that case. It makes me so sick. Ooh, Selena. The sheath was placed at that location without receiving bloody transfer from the hands or fingers of the suspect that did it. That's the other thing that's crazy. Is that, think about this. You're all bloody. So when that would have been placed, whoever did it, they had to have not had any. They had to have. This had to have been after they took off all their clothing. Yeah, this is crazy. This is the 8 hours. I mean, you guys need to watch this. This is. I have no idea what happened, but there is no way that I could convict anybody. I couldn't convict anybody unless more evidence came to light that's wherever. Because what the state is saying happened did not. And I don't care who the fuck did it. Your version of the events that took place here is not accurate. It goes against everything of all the evidence. Like, what the fuck? You don't even know when Ethan and Xana came home, nor have you tried to figure that out. And why would that be significant? For what I'm saying is because if they were home way earlier, then they could have been killed earlier. And who was the person that's reporting? Dylan and Bethany both say that we have no idea. We don't know when we have no idea when Xana and Ethan came home. That's wild to me. That's fucking crazy to me. That's so crazy to me. They said they don't know where Xana was when she made the DoorDash order. Well, how the fuck do you not know that? How anybody out there wants to say that this case is just open and shut, they are fucking lying to themselves, and let them lie to themselves. Okay? You cannot read this shit and say there is nothing to see here. You can't say that these guys have been writing textbooks for all these years. That's Turvey right there. That's him. He's citing his own shit. That they're just going to come in here and want to fuck around and write this shit up just for the fuck of it. And I don't want to hear anybody say to me, well, then why did you take a plea deal? I don't care. That's not the point. We should ask ourselves, wow, yeah, why would he? Not why did he? Why would he? Why would you? This case should have never been allowed to go to a plea deal. Why did Ann Taylor tell him to? Why did Ann Taylor advise him to? Because at the end of the day, there is DNA of yours on that sheath. But all it takes is one person to convince that we don't get, it's touch DNA. That could have gotten there so many different ways, right? Oh, but guess what? He bought that knife on Amazon. But he bought it like in March. Didn't even know if he was accepted in a WSU. Didn't even, I mean, don't know. I just think the jury would have a very interesting. It's wild. Then, because he can't show any of that, so then he says, "Here you go. Primary target. The primary target in the case was Kaylee Gonsalves. She was specifically targeted by the suspects, and now that's nuts because Kaylee wasn't potentially even going to be there that weekend. Kaylee decided to go there last minute." She was specifically targeted by the suspects, and the rest of the victims in the home were collateral, according to Turvey. Only one person was intended to get killed that night, according. But why would one person that was intended to get killed? Why did multiple people need to come there to kill her? How about that one? So a group of people had an issue with Kaylee. Think about that. This is based on the following facts and evidence. Kaylee's room was the least convenient and most risky to access in the home, and he meant to say Maddie's. Yet she and Madison were attacked first. I don't think that there's. When I go through Matt Nodal stuff, Nodal stuff, it's going to be clear what I'm going to point to and why I think that I get it. There's blood of Maddie and Kaylee's that's diluted, that's in the living room. Okay. There's no diluted blood of anybody else's in the living room. There's blood that's just Kaylee's in the living room. And then there's blood that's just Ethan's in the living room. And those two are not diluted. I think a lot of things were not even swabbed that needed to be swabbed, though. They should have never stopped swabbing until they could find in Xana's room a mixture of Ethan, Xana, and then somebody from upstairs. Like, I would have told my team, we're not stop. Like, we have to, like, if we can't find this mixture, then there's no way that we can prove the theory that the state wants to go with. Because on the stand, I could never testify to that because everything that I went and did, and that doesn't show that. So, like, why the fuck would they never go back and continue to swab things to find that? That tells me everything about they were so scared to find. They were so scared of what they would find that they stopped swabbing. And they were so scared of what to find that they didn't swab specifically in certain areas. Doesn't that bother people? Like, that bothers me. Because how you wouldn't go back and you just would. The attack suffered by Kaylee was the most intensive, involving the most injuries, and was therefore the most time-consuming. Kaylee was stabbed repeatedly in the face until she was unrecognizable. I cannot believe so. No other victim suffered this amount of close-up facial attention or damage. And he's like saying that, like, that's based on textbook. Kaylee suffered multiple types of lethal force. All the other victims suffered only one form of lethal force. But that's not true based on Barb. And maybe what he means by that, because a different weapon. But anyways, in any case, he's saying that all other victims suffered only one form of lethal force. This level of unnecessary close interaction and brutality are characteristic of primary targets in cases motivated by anger and rage. So what's the victimology on Kaylee? Oh, what's that, Lana? We don't even do that. What do you mean? Motive. The physical and behavioral evidence. Behavioral. You want to ask Cyree about that in an interview to say that Brent Turvey mentions behavioral stuff in his analysis. So the physical and behavioral evidence in this case, evidence and anger, retaliatory motivation. And now that's I'm interested in. This was retaliation. Of why would there be multiple people then? So think about this. If more than one person went there for Kaylee due to retaliation, think about that. How would multiple people, like, I mean, that's just like, As explained in Turvey 2022, this is evidenced by crime scene behaviors that involve a great deal of rage, either toward a specific person, group, or institution, or a symbol of either. It is also evidenced by what may be referred to as evidence of overkill, injury beyond what needed to cause death, involving the repeated infliction of injury subsequent to the application of lethal force, in combination with multiple types of lethal force against one victim and not the others. This motive is all but confirmed. He's saying this is textbook. Should new evidence become available, the examiner would necessarily reconsider and any other. And there you go. And so I think that everybody should tune in to hear what Cyree has to say about this, because I'm interested to hear how he wants to set the record straight. And he plans on setting the record straight that Brent Turvey is a hack. And that this is wild. And I'm here for that. I'm here for the fact of the matter is that if it's textbook, it's textbook. But maybe it was designed to be like that. I don't know. You know? Remember, so let me get this straight, guys. If somebody went into Maddie or Kaylee's room because they thought Kaylee would be in there, but Kaylee wasn't, right? The next thing is like, let me go into Maddie's room because she should be in there. Moto Man, can I just say, Lana, you need Cyree to come on and explain this. I think he's going to explain it. How are you, Moto Man? Good to see you in here. Allie Tally got 10 people memberships. Thank you, Allie Tally. Karen, we have a new Karen. Karen, hello, 10 memberships. Sorry, I'm just getting to this right now. I was just on a fucking roll, Karen. Oh, shit. I think I feel bad. I would tell me that this case would not, if you were a juror on this case, that it would not mess with you for the rest of your life. Like, God. The stuff that the jury was going to be put through. Horrible. Same with the families, man. Karen, thank you so much. Black Cat and Jam, member for 25 months. Lana, will we ever know why Ann Taylor agreed to a plea deal? I think we will. I do. This case is long from over. I think that you're going to hear that from the experts if you haven't already. But I think that this case is nowhere like, hey, it's done, move on type of thing. Absolutely not. I want to know who's going to write a book first, Dylan or Bethany. Came out of nowhere, first in line for interviews, discussion, but don't really say much. So Brian cannot be one, not at the crime scene, and two, the killer. Can't be both. Cyree says Brian was nowhere near the scene. Moon says then it's done. No, there's just no evidence of it. Like he's saying that the state can't claim that. But more importantly, what they're saying is, though, the state lied. And that's the big part about it, is that you don't need to do that when you got the right man and you got all the evidence. Kaylee, I need to know what happened. This case has consumed my life. Yeah. Well, we're trying to get the documents, guys. This week, I'm anticipating my FOIA being filled. So I'm hitting up Moscow first thing on tomorrow's Monday. I'll be live tonight at 9:30. We got, I don't know, 500 pages of all Turtle Boy shit. So those of you guys have been following that. Let's see. We got all the Sharilla transcripts, the bind over, and it's bad, guys. She deserves, I mean, think whatever you want about her, think whatever you want about her parents. Everybody deserves a fair trial. Everybody deserves fucking effective representation. That girl had nothing of the sort. That girl's representation was just as bad as Sheldon Jeter Jr.'s. Is bad. I read through all those transcripts, so we're going to put them out here. Yeah. Well, and you know what? Think about how the families must feel. And you guys can say, okay, they don't care, whatever. You guys, they care, and they've been just lied to. I couldn't imagine being lied to the way they've been lied to. I couldn't imagine it. This just deserved to go to trial. And Hippler is absolutely nuts for what he said. So, but a lot more is coming. I think this is just the beginning of the fuckerage. So thank you guys for joining in on this Sunday. I don't care about the Turtle Boy crap, but I want to hear about Mackenzie. Well, like I said, the only reason I'm covering the Turtle Boy crap is because I'm sorry, but there is a huge fuckerage going on with that. You guys, a lot of people donated a lot of money to something that they thought was a, boots on the ground, fighting corruption with, clean hands and all this crap. And I take umbrage with being lied to in that capacity, because there's a lot of people that could have, think about any other case out there who could have really truly used the community coming together for $1 million fucking defense. So also, people in Boston and people following that case for some reason think that two rights make a wrong, that because Proctor's a piece of shit, that it doesn't matter that somebody that's outing a piece of shit. Look at what he outed. Okay, but it doesn't change the fact that he is the same. So and how you go about something. And everybody deserves to be innocent until proven guilty. And then it would include Jennifer McCabe. Yeah, I mean, that includes all these people. And when you want that same thought process for Karen Reed, how you can go about it in any other way but the same way for anybody else is fucking laughable. That means that you truly don't believe that. That means it's selective, and I'm not down with that shit. Okay, like I said, personally, you can think whatever the fuck you want about people. I don't give a fuck. But when it comes to our rights, we all have the same rights, and you are no different than the people that you go at that you want to put on display. So, and I swear to God, if that fucking fat fuck, Kazi McCause fucker, ats me again on fucking Twitter, that cum guzzling fuck, 60-year-old fucking slime piece of shit perv, I told you, do not contact me. And that motherfucker keeps tagging, like, at the at symbol is a form of contact. That is unwanted. You best be careful, buddy. That's all I gotta say about that. Some fucking guy on Rat House Media bullshit. Kazi, who the fuck knows? Anybody that fucking has a name like that and can't just stand by their own name, like right here, Lana Oriani, come get some. You're a fucking pathetic pussy bitch. Okay? And you can't even fucking tie my shoes. So sit and spin. I have no idea what the fuck his name is. People are like in the comments over here, like, who is this? Guys, I have no idea. Kazi, fucking spin, sit on my fucking lap, bitch. I don't know. So I'm just saying, keep your perv ass the fuck away from me. But right. I'll see you guys in the next one. Tina says, much love to the community. This is Tina with What the Fuck Transition Services. If you want to hear fucking Tina get rowdy, yeah. She'll be getting rowdy tonight at 9:30. So, all right, guys, peace out. Rock it. Rock you like a hurricane. Get your Borgs out. Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all. Till the next one. Jam out with your clam out.